BlackRock is one of the most infamous companies in history. It's the largest financial firm to ever exist and controls assets more than 90% of every country in the world. It's been marred in controversy as it slowly built itself up to be, simply put, the most powerful company in our planet, but everything you know about BlackRock is about to change. They've pushed their luck too far. They have become entrenched in their own corrupt games, and the floor is beginning to fall out from underneath them. 3 years ago, 90% of us didn't even know what BlackRock was. Today, we all know who they are and tremble when we hear them speak, but in 1 year's time, BlackRock will simply be a shadow of its former self, as the collapse of the greatest financial institution the world has ever seen has already started. You just don't know it yet. And if this is the first time hearing of their demise, you have to ask why that is. Why is the mainstream media trying so hard to hide this information from you? And if you want to know what's really going on, then sign up for my 100% free email newsletter, Stoic Markets. You've already heard 100 times about how big BlackRock are, how they're bigger than any other company in the world, and maybe even how they plan to dominate the world. But what you don't know is how they got to this point and how it actually involved infiltrating the US government. BlackRock have been sending their executives to work for the US government in very high profile and important roles, and they've also been hiring up ex-government employees and giving them huge paydays because of their connections. Eric von Nostrand used to be BlackRock's managing director, but now he's a senior advisor to Joe Biden. Mike Pyle used to be BlackRock's chief investment officer, but now he's chief economic advisor to Kamala Harris. Biden also hired 2 other BlackRock executives, Brian Deese and Adewale Ediamo, immediately after winning the last election to be Deputy Treasury Secretary and Chief of the National Economic Council. There are literally hundreds more examples, but they all point to the same thing. BlackRock have huge levels of influence over the US government, and they create market conditions to benefit themselves at the expense of everyone else. And this isn't capitalism because there is no competition here, it's government corruption and corporatism dragging America down. Now, you're probably aware of this, but BlackRock is not a popular company. They have their dirty little fingers buried deep in every pie they can find, and this is starting to get them a lot of unwanted attention. Larry Fink, the founder and CEO of BlackRock, never wanted to be famous. He never wanted to have his face plastered on thumbnails of thousands of YouTube videos just like this one. He never even wanted us to know of his existence, but as BlackRock grew, he had no choice but to slowly but surely enter the limelight. Now, he's practically a household name, but not for any good reasons. Try to find a positive video about BlackRock here on YouTube and you will seriously struggle, and for good reason, I might add. We're all aware of their evil doings and corrupt ways, and that is being publicized everywhere at this point, not just by independent journalists like myself. Even mainstream news outlets that would love to be bought and sold for never to speak a word against BlackRock. Even they have no choice but to reluctantly report on this cabal and how unpopular they're becoming, because to stay silent is to remove all smoke and mirrors and declare themselves nothing more than puppets altogether. This first came to the surface with the huge levels of controversy surrounding BlackRock buying up single-family homes. After it emerged, they were practically buying up entire towns in the US, forcing entire communities to rent and gaining a monopoly on the market in the process. This came to a head as the Wall Street Journal published a piece titled, "If you sell a house these days, the buyer might be a pension fund," which focused on the worrying trend of billion-dollar financial institutions. And who did they mention by name? Well, BlackRock, of course. But BlackRock came out and denied everything. They even paid millions to advertise a press release announcing, "We want to make it perfectly clear, BlackRock is not buying individual houses in the US." But scroll down just half a page and you can very clearly see them quietly admit that they are investing and buying into multifamily properties, apartment complexes, and other residential real estate. So they are buying people's homes, just not their houses, and not exactly a great look. Now, for some, this was enough to stop pushing. They believed the headlines and refused to dig any deeper, but many others did not do the same. And at this point, all this information has been public knowledge for years, and yet there are hardly any mainstream media outlets reporting on it. You'd think it'd be everywhere, that the largest financial institution in the world practically owns the richest country in the world, but no one seems to want to talk about it, and you have to ask why. Why are businesses like the New York Times so intent on maintaining their smoke and mirrors? Why are TV stations refusing to tell their viewers these incredibly important government appointments? Maybe, just maybe, it has something to do with the fact that BlackRock are the largest shareholders of these companies. Guess who owns 7% of Fox News? Guess who owns 5% of News Corp? Guess who own 8% of Comcast? That's right, BlackRock. These aren't controlling stakes, but they give BlackRock a board member and a seat at every table at every single publicly traded company, including all the ones which control the media. BlackRock even owns 6% of Google, which means they have influence over YouTube and they use it more than you would believe. Now, there is an incredibly high likelihood that this video is demonetized, shadow banned, and buried, or even deleted, as the powers that be don't want you to see what is going on. And the only way to ensure that you know the truth is to leave their ecosystems to get your information from platforms immune from censorship. And that's where my 100% free email newsletter Stoic Market comes in. We send out 3 emails a week explaining exactly what is going on in the world, exposing the truth behind companies like BlackRock and Blackstone, and we do it for free. On these emails, I can't be censored, I can't be silenced. You get to hear the truth without any global institution getting in your way. Even in this video, I can't actually expose everything I want to. I have had to censor myself to even publish this video onto YouTube. But in exactly 7 days, I'll be sending out an email to this newsletter exposing everything that I can't say here, and you do not want to miss it. As I said, it's 100% free. You can sign up with just one click down below, and you can always instantly unsubscribe in the future if you want to, so check out Stoic Markets and reveal to yourself the truth. Now, the French are infamous for rioting, and for good reason. It is their national pastime, but a couple of weeks ago, the French did something they'd never done before. They directed their anger not at the government, but at BlackRock. A group of protesters in Paris found out where BlackRock's headquarters for the country was. They broke into the office and chanted about their opposition to the company. It should be abundantly clear at this point that BlackRock is no longer this shadowy figure secretly running the world, because our eyes have been opened. We know who BlackRock are, we know what they're doing, and people are seriously unhappy about the state of things, so they are forcing a change, and this is one area that BlackRock cannot rig. They can skew media reporting in their favor, they can have favorable laws and regulations passed to help them profit, but they cannot defeat democracy as a whole. They cannot fight against an entire population intent on tearing them down. And this is where the problems for BlackRock get serious, because their golden goose is currently being torn apart. ESG is a scheme for supposedly investing into good companies as opposed to bad ones. Every investment is given an environmental, societal, and governance score, and that is supposed to be a sign of how good these companies are. It's a way to ensure people's money isn't going towards destructive and evil businesses, but like everything in financial markets, its real true purpose is profit. And who profits? Well, BlackRock, of course. They created this system, which means they get to decide which companies are good and which ones are bad. That means HSBC, a bank which helped Mexican drug cartels to launder billions of dollars, well, they are good for society according to this scale. And oil companies like BP, right after they caused the biggest oil spill in history, well, they are apparently good for the environment. This entire system is a scam and has been a scam for decades. Companies pay off BlackRock to give them good ESG scores, and in return, BlackRock direct their investor capital towards these businesses. Everyone loses except BlackRock, but in this day and age, the jig is up. We've all realized what is really going on, and people are starting to speak out, and we're starting to be heard. News articles started to peep out from smaller independent outfits, blowing the roof on the cabal, and outrage started to build, especially when it became clear the real agenda wasn't about climate change and saving the planet, but about pure profit, dollars and cents. But 2 events in particular really accelerated this process and revealed to millions of people what was really going on. The first is surrounding Elon Musk, a man with hundreds of millions in his audience. If he wants to send a message out, no one can stop him and no one can stop it from spreading, so he took aim and he fired at ESG scores. Back in mid-2022, Elon came out and said the world has lost its integrity after oil giant ExxonMobil was listed one of the top 10 companies in the world for ESG, while his electric car maker Tesla was booted off the list entirely. Now, people heard Elon Musk speak and they agreed with him. How could an oil company possibly be better for the world than an electric car company? At first, media articles were simply reporting on what Elon said, but public support for he and his statement was so strong that they had no choice but to back his statement too. Soon enough, we started getting articles from Barron's and Unheard saying Elon is right about his claim that ESG was a scam. The media finally reported on the truth, but it was reluctant to say the least. Where things really accelerated downhill for ESG was with FTX and SBF. Sam Bankman-Fried, for those who don't know, scammed millions for billions using his crypto exchange, but prior to his scam being exposed, was lauded as running one of the best ESG businesses in the world. He routinely found himself at the top of ESG rankings, and he used this status to pull in billions of dollars into his firm, which he then stole with no regard for right or wrong. He was also found to have donated $36 million of this stolen cash to Democrats and $105,000 to Republicans, which might explain why his company was so leniently treated up to the fraud being exposed, and maybe even why he's still allowed to fly around in first class to this day. Now, November came around, SBF had been arrested and life in jail is looking incredibly likely, so he decided to blow the roof on the whole thing too, and this ESG love child announced that ESG was a total complete scam. He announced that he and his business would just say random things out loud, like FTX would become carbon neutral, and that as a result of this, he was able to bring in billions in funding. To quote the criminal himself, ESG has been perverted beyond recognition, it's just PR, nothing more. But now we all know this fact. ESG has been exposed as a fraud and it's losing its appeal. Within a few years, it's incredibly likely to be practically ignored by every fund manager with $1 billion to spare, and that is bad news for Blackrock. They basically had a monopoly on this industry. They created it themselves, so that shouldn't surprise anyone, but now it's all falling apart. And ESG's fraudulent reality has been known for practically as long as ESG rules have even existed, so why have we only just started talking about it, and why is the mainstream media still refusing to cover this with the attention it deserves? I'm afraid you already know the answer. It's because BlackRock control the media, and this cabal is what allowed them to grow to be the biggest institution in history, and they want to keep running their racket. The media is in their pocket, and the only way to get this kind of information is to leave the mainstream ecosystem altogether. My 100% free email newsletter Stoic Market exists for this sole reason, so I can give back to you and thank you personally for helping me to build out this channel. Through this email newsletter, I can tell you the truth with no puppet master dangling over me, limiting what I can and can't say. Even this YouTube video has not been free from censorship. I've been forced to remove aspects and parts of this video after YouTube shadow banned the first release. Even after watching this video, you don't know the whole truth, but in exactly 1 week, in 7 days, I will reveal all. I will expose to you exactly what is going on with BlackRock and explain all that I had to remove from this video. To sign up, just click the link down below in the description for Stoic Markets. It is 100% free as always. You just click that button right there, and you can of course unsubscribe instantly, no questions asked, if you want any time, or if you just want to hear about how Blackstone is on the brink of collapse, then watch this video here.